While we look after some plants today, let's talk about self-care. What do you think about when you hear the phrase self-care? Are you thinking about candles, spa treatments, bubble baths? Do you think about going on holiday, eating what you want, drinking as much as you want, or sitting in front of the TV? Or perhaps it's giving yourself some retail therapy while emptying your bank account. I would like to invite you to think about yourself and caring for yourself in a slightly different way. We'll be seeing what we can do about this rose. I'll tell you the story of how this came about. Self-care can be imagined as how you would look after a vulnerable person, one who's weak or tired, or who has been through a lot either over a long period of time or a short, intense period of hardship. Someone who might be ill, or someone who might be injured through normal perils of life. I'm talking about you, the normal day-to-day stuff that you would go through, that you would need to care yourself around. How would you care for that person? I imagine going on a shopping spree or going partying with friends would be the last thing you would offer them. So why do we think that would be the best thing to offer ourselves? Let's think about the different things you could offer that person, which are the different ways we can look after ourselves. A very obvious one is staying hydrated. One of the first things that happen when someone is admitted to hospital is to introduce intravenous fluids to the body. When we are unwell and in treatment of any kind, more emphasis is placed on drinking water than anything else. Water is the most important thing a living being needs, so ensure you're drinking plenty of water, which includes healthy fluids like teas and light soups throughout the day. The next obvious thing is good food. Nourishing your body helps to repair your cells and organs and give you the fuel you need to keep going. Let your food be varied, rich in nutrients such as fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. I think we all know what good food is, and we know what junk food is. So nourishing yourself completely is utmost self-care. You also need exercise. This can be gentle or vigorous. Engage in regular physical activity you enjoy, either at home or outside. This could be walking, dancing, running, or any kind of stretches that will keep your body moving and flexible. Whatever you choose Move your body regularly every day. You don't have to start big and heavy. You can start slowly and gently, doing something more than you did yesterday. If you walked 100 meters yesterday, perhaps try 200 today. If you didn't walk at all today, perhaps do a little bit of walking tomorrow. Every little movement that you give your body helps to care for you in so many different ways. This spider plant that I'm trimming now as it's winter is the mother of all the spider plants we have in this house, and we have about 5 of them, and I have one in the office. And while it's a very resilient plant, it still needs to be cared for. I took off the branches that contain the flowers because it's no longer flowering. It will probably need to go dormant in the winter, and it's November now. And so I'm taking away all the dead leaves and all the parts that it doesn't need, because it's going to need as much space to relax this season. So I'm just here removing the unproductive leaves and any extras it doesn't need, any little bits of dead wood and dead plants. But I'm not going to be taking off all the leaves. I'm going to be leaving them just as they are, because I don't want to shock the plant itself. So I know it looks untidy, but it will soon relax into its own space where it is. I'm just taking this opportunity to assess this Monstera deliciosa and just wipe down the leaves a little bit, just to check that there aren't any bugs hanging around there. It's a baby Monstera. I found a little node in my bigger Monstera and I started to plant it, and I'll do a different video as to the progress of this Monstera. But I noticed that light green leaf has just unfurled, so I'm not going to touch it too much. And the soil is not needing water. Just taking a look, everything looks fine, and so I'm just going to be leaving it as it is. I've checked that it's okay, so I'm just going to aerate the soil there. So this is my very precious rose plant. It came as a very, very small baby rose, and I have repotted it since it came. And I'll tell you the story behind this plant. So it was very nice and healthy. It's quite temperamental, and so I rescued it from the office because it started to look a bit tired in the office. So I brought it home. While it was at home, I watered it once a month and just made sure everything was fine. But then I went away on holiday without leaving any instructions. Well, guess what? It was watered while I was away. The thing is, we all need different measures of attention, food, and activity. This particular plant needed a very small amount of water and just needed to be left alone. My mother, in her attempt to care for it while I was away, watered it thoroughly through and through and left it in a tray of water, hoping it'll soak up some more water. What happens when we get overwhelmed? We feel like we are drowning and we shut down. This can in itself lead to isolation and resignation. And this plant did just that. It lost all its leaves and it started to die. And when I got back, I found it covered in cobwebs with no energy to fight any pests. As I laid eyes on it, I was distraught. I had been growing that rose very gently and carefully, and now it was dead. By the way, what I'm doing now, I'm just still trying to care for the plant, but I'll just carry on with what I did before these leaves that you can see here came back. But while I'm saying that, think about what you need to care for yourself. To truly care for yourself, allow yourself to feel your emotions, both positive and negative, and find ways of expressing them. This can be by talking, where you get a chance to share how it feels to be sad, disappointed, or tired, or by journaling, where you can express your feelings through writing. Allow yourself to cry if you need to. Remember to use I sentences when expressing how you feel about something to someone. Own your feelings and emotions. So about this plant, at that time, I thought it might be the best to throw it out and prepare to start another one over. Another important component of self-care is practicing mindfulness. It is paying attention to the present moment without judgment, setting aside the past and future, and considering the now. As I sat with this dying plant, I noticed the stalks were still green and looked healthy enough. The brown leaves dropped as I touched them, so I swiped off all the leaves, leaving just thorny stalks. I wondered what it would be like to nurse this plant back to health. It might not survive, but I'm sure I would learn a lot along the way. I waited for the soil to dry out properly by just leaving the plant alone. Another important component of self-care is learning to forgive, which I had to do when I thought about my mom watering this plant. Letting go of resentment, anger, bitterness, and regret is so important for self-care. Bitterness and regret fills you with unhealthy poison and keeps you tied up in the past. Resentment keeps you exhausted and unable to move forward. Anger blinds you and stops you from seeing the wide range of options ahead of you. Sometimes you have to cut off the dead parts and remove energy sapping areas in order to give yourself a shot of recovering. So previously I had not added any fertilizers because what that plant needed was rest or recovery, and I left it alone. One important part of self-care is rest and sleep. Letting yourself rest and getting plenty of sleep to allow yourself recover every day. Practice relaxation techniques daily. Breathe deeply, letting clean air fill your lungs and breathe fully. So back to this rose. After about a week, I noticed new leaves breaking forth. I paid attention to it, checking its moisture levels carefully. And the rose started to respond to this new level of care. Practicing gratitude is a part of self-care. Appreciating what you have and what you have achieved so far. Focus on the things you're thankful for. This helps you call to mind how well you have done and reminds you of your capacity to create and achieve. I cleaned this plant. I cleaned out all the dead parts of it and some dust that had accumulated on it. Just like us, a clean body keeps you healthy and feeling fresh, washing away the stresses of the day and helping you start every day anew. My plan with this plant is to continue to watch and to wait. It might not survive. These leaves that you see here are new leaves. When I came back and started to nurse it back to health, it had no leaves at all because I had taken off all the old leaves. Well, they'd fallen off the moment I touched them. So now I have added a very light fertilizer into its soil to see if I could give it a burst of health just before the winter kicks in fully, because this time of year it would drop its leaves anyway. So I'm just checking how much moisture I have in the soil, because what I'm going to do is to leave it alone now. I'm not going to be watering it anymore for another month maybe. So I'm just going to watch and wait and see what happens. This here is my Vietnamese coriander. Something similar happened to it as well. It was overwatered and it lost all its leaves. But it's still very attached to the soil, so I think the roots are still fine. And you can see in the branches, I just noticed some tiny leaves over there in the corner. That's how I knew that this plant hadn't fully died. So I don't think you could see it there, but I've just I noticed this morning some tiny leaves growing in that stalk. So I'm going to see if I can take off some of the dead branches. And yes, in that branch there was a tiny leaf there. So I am going to see if I can replant something just to see, but we're going to see if this Vietnamese coriander will last if I took off the dead leaves. That's me just checking the soil to see if it has enough moisture. And that branch, you might not be able to see it, but there are two tiny leaves there. So I'm going to try to replant just that branch just to see. I've never replanted a Vietnamese coriander, but I'm going to try today. On the topic of self-care, find opportunities to connect with others, especially those who love and support you, and those who you can do the same for. That also means spending time away from people who elevate your stress levels and cause you pain. Set healthy boundaries in all your relationships and learn to say no when you feel overwhelmed or have been overstretched. That plant, the rose and this coriander, they couldn't say no when they were being swamped, but you can. So here I am. I'm going to try to see if I can use some rooting powder on that little branch just to give it a chance to root if possible. So I think I'm just going to use that on this occasion. Usually I would just plant directly in soil, but I'm going to use a rooting hormone for this part just to give it a chance. I'm really happy that I found some leaves in this plant. I feel really grateful when I can bring a plant to life, because it just shows the power, the immense power of nature to repair itself given the chance. Find the space to acknowledge your accomplishments and celebrate your successes, no matter how small. I never thought I'd be celebrating a tiny leaf growing out of a seemingly dead plant, but hey, here we are. Whatever you do, do not overdo it. Set realistic goals. Don't try to do everything all at once. You'll only burn out. Break down larger goals into smaller, achievable and acknowledgeable steps, because you want the space to be able to acknowledge it, to be able to acknowledge what you're putting into life. You want the space to be able to appreciate your work and all the day-to-day tasks that you achieve and those that you leave for tomorrow. Remember that self-care is not selfish. It is completely essential for your overall well-being. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Pay attention to yourself and your needs. Listen to your body and attend to signs that show you that you are getting tired or something feels off. Sometimes you cannot do it yourself. Sometimes you cannot tell what has gone wrong all by yourself. Sometimes you need external support to get you on your way. Seek professional help if you need to. Find a therapist or a counselor you can feel comfortable with to help you uncover the areas that need attention. Of course, you can speak to family and friends because they know you really well and they can tell when something is off. But be careful that their expectations don't become yours. Listen to yourself. My dear friends, remember that this life and body is the only one you have. There are no replacements, no do-overs. There is none other that's currently available for you to use apart from the body you currently have. I remember someone saying to me that when we are healthy, we chase lots of things. But when we are sick, we chase after only one thing, and that is how to be well again. So look after yourself. Look after your very precious self, because you are important and you are needed. While you're at it, challenge negative thoughts. The thoughts that tell you that it wouldn't matter, you have too much to do, nobody's gonna care if you're not here. Any thoughts that make you look upon yourself as something that is unimportant, challenge those thoughts and care for yourself like you were caring for somebody that is really important and really special. I have finished my work here today, but as we close, remember to replace self-criticism with self-compassion, because there are people around us telling us how wonderful we are, but we don't always believe them. It's time to tell yourself how important you are and to be compassionate to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Thank you for being here with me and for watching this video. See you again soon.